Well, one thing that I really appreciate about coming to Marlborough is that all of the weight of like troubles at work and things that have happened in the past week just drifted away within minutes. That's one thing I find very refreshing, to be cleansed for the upcoming week.
The Quaker
podcast.
Story, spirit, sound.
I'm Zach Jackson.
And I'm John Watts.
And today we have a very special episode. As you may remember, every so often we like to take you inside a meeting for worship, to hear the ministry that was given, and to give you a sense of what it's like to worship in that particular Quaker meeting.
And since Quaker meetings have different styles of worship, these episodes are going to be somewhat varied.
Yeah, can you walk me through those branches again? I know there's programmed and unprogrammed.
Right, yeah, you got it. Those are the two kind of styles of worship you might encounter when you walk into a Quaker meeting. But, you mentioned branches. It's worth mentioning that there can be really different theologies and approaches even within those two categories.
Okay, so like liberal Quakers, they're mostly unprogrammed. Pastoral Quakers, of course, have at least some form of programmed worship. What else is there?
Well, there are evangelical Quakers, and that's a topic for a future episode. But there's one more branch, and it's one that we haven't talked about much yet on this podcast: Conservative Quakers.
And just to clarify, when you say conservative, you mean that in the sense of like conserving the Quaker tradition, not necessarily politically conservative.
Right, you got it. Yeah, so here's the quick, superficial description of Conservative Quakers. They have a couple of yearly meetings: Ohio, North Carolina, Iowa. If you see a plain dressing Quaker, they are most likely conservative. Conservative Quakers are unprogrammed and Christ-centered. So those are blanket statements, and that explanation really doesn't come anywhere close to doing them justice.
What do you mean?
Yeah, well, I don't really know how to describe this feeling. Words kind of fail. Quakers have this term that we use to try to describe someone who is a deep Quaker, deeply wise, deeply grounded, profoundly rooted in the Quaker tradition, and just radiating that sense. We call that person a weighty friend. So I don't know, that doesn't really even do it justice either. When I was preparing for this episode, I thought back to the most impactful moments of my own Quaker spiritual formation, and all of those moments involve conservative Quakers in some way or another. You kind of just have to experience it directly.
So that sounds like a field trip.
Field trip, yeah. We actually have a conservative Quaker meeting right in our backyard, less than an hour from Philadelphia.
Okay, well, let's strap in. But first I wanted to mention, when we were preparing for this episode, you told me that you've been setting this up for how long?
Right. So I first reached out to Ohio Yearly Meeting in April of 2024.
Oh, so almost 2 years.
Right. Well, so I know that's a lot of time to put into one episode, but this was really important to me. I think that conservative friends have something really vital to teach us. And I do have to say, even the slow experience of discernment has been a profound experience for me. I got to present the idea of this episode at Ohio Yearly Meeting Conservative last summer. And it was maybe the most gathered Quaker business meeting that I've ever been a part of. In the end, they gave us permission to record before and after, but not the worship itself. So when we go into the meeting house, we'll turn the microphones off. We think you'll understand why once we get into it. Anyway, I'm deeply appreciative to all the friends at Ohio Yearly Meeting Conservative who labored with this question and saw the path forward to doing this episode with us.
Well, on that note, maybe we should get it started then.
Let's go.
Before we set out, we wanted to better understand what Ohio Yearly Meeting Conservative is like and what we should expect before visiting Marlborough Friends Meeting. So we called up Seth Hinshaw, who's a member of the meeting and someone with a deep appreciation for Quaker history.
Well, Ohio Friends like to say that we represent the pre-division Society of Friends. I guess the reason that people say that sometimes is that Ohio Yearly Meeting has the traditional structure of worship for Quakers, but also the traditional theology. Conservative Friends has a little bit of baggage with it because of the way that the word conservative is used politically. Like, Ohio Friends are not necessarily politically conservative.
And that desire to conserve the tradition isn't just theological, it's practical too.
Having said that, about, I would say 80% of plain dress Quakers are somehow associated with Ohio Yearly Meeting. Some monthly meetings have a bigger percentage, like maybe half or more of their members wear plain clothes. But other meetings in Ohio, nobody does. I mean, it's not an expectation. The expectation, again, it gets back to the idea of what we're being asked to do in our lives to express our faith. One of the people from England who came over to visit with us a few times, Tony Backadams, said he described it as wearing our baptism.
That commitment to integrity, to wearing your faith on your sleeve, to being plain in speech and honest in intention, also applies to how they make decisions. We spoke with Chip Thomas, another member of Marlborough, about why it took 2 years for us to get permission to visit.
There is a long-standing understanding that one does not record worship. That's something that I've known grown up. Unfortunately, there's a kid inside me that was really excited about this idea of sharing. It was clear that it needed this because the first reach out, I was the first contact, but then it went to a yearly meeting, ministry and oversight, and it eventually went to discernment to every monthly meeting in the yearly meeting. They went through a discernment process. It wasn't just Marlborough, and then it came back to ministry and oversight, and there was some more careful pondering before it was clear that, yes, there are reasons for these traditions. And so they asked that's why Ohio Yearly Meeting asked that there be no recording equipment in the worship.
They're protecting a specific kind of depth, and that depth is baked into the very foundation of the building itself. Chip told us a story of the meeting's origin to illustrate that point.
This goes back to a time many years ago. There were two Quaker farmers. One of them lived upstream and one downstream. And there was a problem because the farmer upstream saw fit to dam up the water only for his own use, and that really left the farmer downstream without what he needed to run his farm. And the Quaker downstream struggled and labored with him, but it didn't help. He went to his local meeting. They labored with the farm upstream, but to no avail. Of course, especially in those days, you would never take anybody to court, let alone another friend. So that wasn't an option. And then one day there was a traveling Quaker minister, as was common in those days, and he brought the question to him. And the minister paused, and finally what he said was, more is required of some than others. This required some introspection and thought. And then one morning he realized what he needed to do. He grabbed a bottle of water and a rag or a cloth, and he went upstream to his neighbor's house, and he knocked on the door. The farmer's wife opened and says, "Where's Bailey?" And he says, "Well, he's upstairs in bed." "Well, I have to see him." So he went into the house. He went upstairs. His neighbor was still in bed. And he opened the door, and of course, his neighbor was a little surprised to see this guy. He said, "What are you doing here?" He says, I've come to reconcile. I've come to wash your feet." And he went over and he washed his neighbor's feet, and then proceeded to hope that they could reconcile their differences. And something shifted in that moment. Bailey escorted Bernard out of the house, and as you can imagine, it wasn't long before he heard the sound of the waters opening up, and the two became very fast friends. And then when it came time to build a local meeting house, they both contributed each of the corner of their property upon which to build the meeting house. And as I suppose you might imagine, that meeting was Marlborough Meeting. And so I think that I like to believe that also reflects the nature of the meeting then and now. That's kind of the history. The meeting was known to have been established in a way by this event.
Reconciliation, humility, and deep preparation. These are the requirements. So when we asked Chip how we should prepare ourselves for Sunday morning, his instructions were simple.
There's a kind of an expectation of slowing one's down, clearing one's mind, coming prepared to receive and not to give. It's conservative friends, and I think possibly other friends call unprogrammed worship waiting worship. For the exercise is to come in and sit and wait, not necessarily to say to wait for the presence of God. There's many interpret this as saying God is there already present, but there's a waiting to have yourself open up to that presence. And so that means if your mind is racing, if your mind is thinking about other things, thinking about the worries and the cares of the day, then that's not so helpful. So take a nap, pause, reflect, read something in spiritual, but certainly then try to empty yourself of those things, and then enter into the silence.
So we paused, we reflected, and then we drove.
Chip described conservative friends as conserving the, I don't know if he said tradition. I think of it as the flame. Early Quakers were on fire with something. They describe meetings for worship not as silent, but as super full. So conservative friends have maintained a sense of worship that I think is the closest you can get in modern times to how early friends might have felt sitting in those powerful original worships. It's kind of hard to describe. I think that's part of the reason they wrestled so much with whether to record it or not. There is really a sacredness to walking into a meeting for worship that's that deep. Google Maps says somewhere around here. I think that's the building.
All right, we are pulling up right now to a simple red brick meeting house. Just like Chip described, it is kind of on the corner of multiple farms. All around us, actually, are either forests or farmlands. It is stunning here. It feels very much like I'm in the early 1800s.
I think that's Chip.
I think you're right. Well, true to our word, we're going to turn the recording equipment off, prepare our hearts and minds for worship, and we'll be back after a short break. For the next hour, we sat on hard wooden benches that were hand-hewn from local trees when Thomas Jefferson was still president. I noticed on those benches precise tool markings from the carpenters right alongside carved initials from kids who had clumsily left evidence of their presence, probably many decades before any of us were born. It was a good visual reminder of the sort of spiritual residue that covers the walls of a place like this. There's nothing inherently sacred about a Quaker meeting house, but anywhere that's been set apart for worship for as long as this space has carries with it a spiritual memory. I found it remarkably easy to slide into that stream and center down into a posture of waiting worship. After about an hour, someone stood up and shook their neighbor's hand, which signaled to the rest of us to do the same. After we'd had a chance to check in with folks, John sat down with Seth to ask him what was happening in that silence for him.
So we came in and sat down, and we were mostly a silent worship. We had 2 messages during the worship, but mostly sitting in quiet. What was happening for you in that silence?
Well, one thing that I really appreciate about coming to Marlborough is that today is another example of just like when I came in, all of the weight of like troubles at work and things that have happened in the past week just drifted away within minutes. That's one thing I find very refreshing, to be cleansed for the upcoming week.
I noticed maybe 40 minutes into worship, you reached for one of the Bibles that's there's one on every pew here, and opened it up. Do you remember what led you to do that, or what you opened it up to?
Yeah, well, if I have a time when I'm here where I don't feel any guidance to speak, one thing that I do is I open to the scriptures in one of the areas where I feel like it's been the longest since I've read that. So what ends up happening actually is when I'm here and I don't feel a leading to speak, that means I'm usually open to parts of the Old Testament. It's not that I have a problem with the Old Testament. I just feel like part of my experience being a Christian is the tighter bond with Jesus and the disciples. And people like Jeremiah tend not to speak to me as much, let's say. Some of the prophets, although I value their experience and what they did, they could be rather mean to people.
Seth uses that time to wrestle with difficult texts, but sometimes you need a little help to get into that headspace. Midway through the meeting, Penny Thomas stood up with a well-worn book in her hand and began reading. In Ohio Yearly Meeting, it's recommended that the advices and queries be read regularly during worship. Penny has also added historical Quaker writings to that list. I caught up with her afterwards in her home and asked her to read the passages that she brought forth in worship.
This one happens to be from George Fox. After thou seest thy thoughts and the temptations, do not think, but submit, and then the power comes. Stand still in the light and submit to it, and the other will be hushed and gone. And then content comes. When temptations and troubles appear, sink down into that which is pure, and all will be hushed and fly away.
What about that one stood out to you? Why do you feel like that one was the message for today?
I don't know if it's any different than when someone shares vocal ministry. Why is that the ministry of the day? Sometimes we don't know. When there's people in meeting that you don't know what they need. You don't know what God's asking you to do. Mm. It may reach someone that needs it that day.
So that one in particular.
That was that one in particular today.
You were just reading through them and that one felt like this is the one to share.
Yes. Yes.
I appreciated the word personally today. I felt like with what was happening in my own heart and soul at the moment that you stood up to speak it definitely resonated with what was welling up within me.
Lots of times I will decide early in meeting what it is I should be reading. I have a tendency to usually wait and read towards the end of meeting. And then sometimes it's interesting that even though it's before I hear any vocal ministry, that they dovetail together because we don't know that's going to be happening. And it's like, to the point they're like, oh, did you pick that out after the ministry, vocal ministry? I'm like, no, I picked it out before. So
it's almost like there's someone else with a plan here.
Yeah. Hopefully that's the point.
We're driving back home after having a meal with the folks from Marlborough Meeting. It was nice to spend a little bit of extended time with them outside of the meeting house. I had a moment in the kitchen with Chip while you were recording the advices and queries with Penny. He was fussing around and getting the chili ready and getting the bowls out and getting the glasses ready, but he paused all that and just sort of steadied himself and looked at me and said, "How does the truth fare with thee?" I've been asked that before, but it's always in a pretty intentional way, and it strikes something pretty deep within me to be asked that. Like, now I'm being asked to do some self-searching, and this person doesn't necessarily expect an immediate answer from me. And I did. I just stood there for a while and I didn't have an answer, and I felt Chip's gentle attention on me as he went back to doing some of the chores to prepare for the meal. He would look at me every once in a while like, are thee ready to respond? And I was clearly still sort of seeking and formulating. I mean, this is the first time I've met him in person. We've had a couple phone conversations, but I feel more fed by that question and the conversation that resulted than, many of the conversations and interactions I have with close friends, And even though Chip had just asked me a really challenging question, I also felt a deep sense of safety. Like, whatever my response to this is, if it's true, then he will appreciate it, and this will be a really rewarding conversation. And there's something about that with the friends we just spent the morning with, this commitment to truth. Like, I found myself over the course of the morning and over the course of the lunch prioritizing truth over pace in the conversation, that it was less about giving a quick answer and it was more about giving a true answer. And there's something about that I have so much longing for in the world and in my relationships. So often it's about filling the space, and the truth, the sort of internal seeking isn't prioritized. And the level of connection and, again, I'm going to say simplicity, but that doesn't sort of contain the spiritual weight of the feeling to me. But there's something about the plainness of let's put truth first, that is freeing.
It's simple, like a taproot is simple.
Yeah.
Not that it's shallow, but that it's deep and simple.
Right.
And we're so used to shallow and complex.
Right. Yeah, that's a great way to put it.
It's Mr. Rogers. That's why.
Deep and simple as opposed to shallow and complex.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Shallow and complex. That's the world we live in. It's the world of the hot take, the notifications, and the constant demand for content over truth. But George Fox gave us the antidote in that reading that Penny shared. He didn't tell us to run faster or think harder. He told us to stand still. When we prioritize truth over pace, like Chip in the kitchen or John in the car, we're doing exactly what Fox asked. We are resisting the urge to be shallow. We are choosing to be deep. We are standing still in the light until the noise of the world is hushed and the truth can finally be heard. Thank you for listening. We are so grateful that you chose to come alongside us on this journey. We also want to thank our friends Chip Thomas, Seth Hinshaw, and Penny Thomas for their hospitality, their vulnerability, and their willingness to try new things. Thank you as well to Ohio Yearly Meeting for your careful and prayerful discernment. If this conversation sparked something in you, don't let it fade. You can find resources to help you go deeper, including a transcript and queries for reflection at QuakerPodcast.com. You'll also find a link to our Discord server, where you can discuss this episode and what it has stirred up in you. This episode was edited and produced by me, Zach Jackson. John Watts wrote and produced the music. The Quaker Podcast is a labor of love, supported by listeners like you. We are a nonprofit dedicated to giving Quakerism in all its forms a platform in the 21st century. If you have the means, and if this work feeds you, we invite you to help us sustain it by clicking support at QuakerPodcast.com. And now, friends, may you find the courage to stand still this week. May you prioritize truth over pace. And may you find that when the noise is hushed, you can finally hear the deep and simple Spirit calling to you. And now, here's your daily Quaker message, as read by Richard Stibbard.
John Greenleaf Whittier, 1838. O Spirit of that early day, so pure and strong and true, be with us in the narrow way our faithful fathers knew. Give strength the evil to forsake, the cross of truth to bear, and love and reverent fear to make our daily lives a prayer.
To get Quaker wisdom in your inbox every day, go to dailyquaker.com. That's dailyquaker.com.